Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports, here for our daily live Formula 1 news video. Lots to talk about today. It was a busy weekend and of course a very busy Formula 1 race weekend at the Monza Grand Prix. It was a very exciting race and we'll of course talk about that throughout this daily news video. To talk about our first article though, and the title of the show today is Carlos Sainz was robbed of his €500,000 watch in Milan. Carlos Sainz chased down Italian robbers who stole his R12 million Richard Mille watch. So, Ferrari Formula 1 driver Carlos Sainz had quite an eventful Italian Grand Prix weekend, from finishing third after starting pole in the main race to catching robbers who tried to steal his €500,000 Richard Mille watch. The Sun reported that Sainz was targeted by thieves near the Armani Hotel in Milan around 8:30 p.m. on Sunday after the Formula 1 race, while Carlos Sainz was out to celebrate his podium victory, but that the driver and members of the public chased them down and retrieved the precious item after it was stolen. Police were on the scene moments later to arrest the two suspects. Carlos Sainz, though, is not the first Formula 1 driver to be victim of such crimes. In 2020, McLaren's Lando Norris had his £40,000 Richard Mille ripped off his arm at Wembley Stadium as he got into his company car, a McLaren GT. How unfortunate for him. At the 2022 Italian Grand Prix, the Imola Grand Prix in Italy, Carlos Sainz's teammate Charles Leclerc was on the receiving end of a robbery, posing for pictures for fans. Just days before the race, a thief subtly removed a €266,000 special edition Richard Mille from his wrist as well. At the time of Leclerc's ordeal, Norris had some choice words over the incident. The people who do such things are not fans, are they? You've got to be a little bit careful every now and then, and more when you have the fame of Charles, or if you're in Formula 1. I don't know if I'm in the phase of needing a bodyguard, because I don't think I do. It's a tough one. Well, unfortunately for Carlos Sainz, he was out with bodyguards when he was on the receiving end of having his watch stolen, unfortunately. But very luckily, they were able to chase down the thieves and were able to retrieve that very expensive watch from those thieves there in Milan. I see we have Mark there in the comment section. Please do be sure to drop a comment down for us. If you do want to ask any questions or anything else, I'm going to start a poll for you guys as well. Just asking you your opinions on the race weekend. Who was your standout driver from the Italian Grand Prix? So your options are Sainz, Verstappen, if I can spell Verstappen, if your driver is not in the poll, please do let us know in the comment section, because our options there are Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc, and Albon. So to move on though from, to carry on a little bit, I do have some quotes from Carlos Sainz on the unfortunate events that did happen on Sunday evening. Sainz posted to social media saying, "As many of you already know, yesterday we experienced an unfortunate incident in Milano. The most important thing is that we are all okay, and this will only remain as an unpleasant anecdote. Many thanks to all the people who helped us yesterday, to the Milan police for their quick intervention, and thanks for all of your messages." Yes, glad to see that Carlos Sainz was okay and was able to retrieve that watch there. But yes, glad to see that we have a couple of you guys all in the, all watching alongside with us now. As we'll move on to the next article here saying, the Italian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen wins from Sergio Perez to surpass Sebastian Vettel's Formula 1 record for most consecutive wins. Max Verstappen set a new record for the most consecutive wins in Formula 1 after an action-packed Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Sergio Perez fought hard to make it a Red Bull 1-2, while Carlos Sainz just held off Charles Leclerc in the final laps to take the third position on the podium. Verstappen, who started second, overtook pole sitter Sainz before the first and only pit stops to secure victory and surpass Sebastian Vettel's record of 9 straight wins from 2013. The triumph extends Verstappen's lead to 145 points in the Drivers' Championship from Perez, as Red Bull maintained their unbeaten record in 2023. I never would have believed it was possible to win 10 races in a row, but we had to work for it today, and that made it a lot more fun, said Verstappen. We had good pace, but they had a lot of top speed, so it was hard to get close and get the move done into turn 1, so I had to force him into a mistake. Luckily, it came at some point where he locked up. I tried to stay patient. They just had to pick my moment. It certainly wasn't an easy overtake for Max Verstappen, who really did, as he says, had to work for that overtake on Carlos Sainz for the lead of the race in those opening stages. As he said there, the Ferraris had a lot of top speed. Perez was involved in an almighty battle behind Verstappen for the final podium places, as Charles Leclerc nearly ran into the back of Sainz on the final lap in the fight for third. George Russell took fifth for Mercedes teammate. George Russell took fifth from Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton, who used an alternate tyre strategy to finish in sixth, despite a late collision with Oscar Piastri's McLaren. Alex Albon gave Williams their joint best result of the season, with seventh ahead of Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, and Valtteri Bottas. The start was delayed to Yuki Tsunoda, who was crawling to a halt at the formation lap, but it was a relatively clean opening lap of the race, as the top 5 drivers held their positions. Sainz led a DRS train at the front from Verstappen and Leclerc, but the Red Bull driver quickly noticed the leader was struggling with his rear tyres. The Ferraris do tend to use up their tyres a lot quicker than the other teams, and we certainly saw that in Monza once again. Verstappen nearly got past on a couple of occasions as he got alongside, approaching the first corner. However, Sainz went too deep into the first chicane on lap 15, which put him on the wrong line for the exit. So Verstappen got a good run through the Curva Grande, which is turn 3, and took the lead before turn 4. Outside of the pit stop phase, Verstappen retained the lead from the remainder of the Italian Grand Prix, although he revealed there was a problem with his car during the latter stages of the races. Behind Verstappen, we saw the biggest race-long battle of the season so far, as Sainz tried to hold off Leclerc and Perez. A slightly slow pit stop for Sainz meant that he was only just ahead of his Ferrari teammate when Leclerc emerged out of the pits, with Leclerc behind the pair. The trio ran in a DRS train for 10 laps before Perez overtook Leclerc on lap 32, despite nearly colliding the lap before. Sainz also defended hard from the Red Bull driver, with Perez claiming he was forced off the track when he cut the first chicane. Even though he eased through on the approach to turn 1 after staying close enough off the last corner to take second place and make it a Red Bull 1-2. But the podium battle wasn't done there, as Leclerc put pressure on Sainz into the closing laps. Just to read on a little bit about that battle between Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, an article about those two saying Leclerc in firm declaration over Sainz Monza podium battle. Carlos Sainz's teammate Charles Leclerc fought with his teammate Carlos Sainz over that final podium position there, as Charles Leclerc has asserted there was nothing amiss between his battle against Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz during the Italian Grand Prix. In the closing stages of the race, the duo went wheel to wheel for the final spot on the podium, with Leclerc trying to pass pole sitter Carlos Sainz after Sergio Perez had passed both of them for second and broke free. The pair managed third and fourth at the flag, separated by just 0.184 seconds, as Red Bull continued its dominance of Formula 1 with a 15 straight win and the 10th on the trot for Max Verstappen. Leclerc attempted an overtake on his teammates on several occasions, with the duo eventually going off the track while battling, with the fight including a last lap lockup from Leclerc at turn 1 that nearly sent him into his teammate on the final lap. Leclerc admitted that his overtake of his teammates on several occasions. Leclerc said after the race, "I honestly really enjoyed it," he told media, including Racing News 365. "It's probably the most enjoyable race of the season, inside the helmet at least." Although the battle threatened to cause upset at Ferrari's home race, Leclerc was firm that the fight is what Formula 1 should be. "I'm sure for the pits, they would have they wouldn't give the same answer, and I'm sure some of the Tifosi maybe didn't enjoy it as much as I did with Carlos, he said. That is exactly what racing should be. In the past with Max, I've had similar fights. With Checo, it was on the limit too. With Carlos, I was on the limit, whether it was defending or attacking, and that made it really enjoyable inside the car. And at the end of it, we maximized the team's points and the maximum result we could have done as a team. So, certainly what the Tifosi would have maybe not wanted to see there at their home Grand Prix, with some really close battling going on between the two Ferrari teammates, but nonetheless, some very exciting on-track action for the Italian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, though, has had some comments by Mercedes chief Toto Wolff, who has said Red Bull's driver record's winning streak is for Wikipedia. Max Verstappen won Sunday's Italian Grand Prix to become the first driver to win 10 successive Formula 1 races. Verstappen eclipsed Sebastian Vettel's record, set in 2013. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff says that such landmarks are not important to him. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff says Max Verstappen's 10-race record winning streak would not be important for him and is for Wikipedia. Verstappen claimed another dominant victory in Sunday's Italian Grand Prix to eclipse the run of 9 races Sebastian Vettel won in 2013. The record was the latest to fall in a remarkable season in which Red Bull have won all 15 races, with Wolff's once dominant Mercedes team unable to answer their rivals' brilliance. During Mercedes' 8-year streak of constructors' titles from 2014 to 2021, Nico Rosberg recorded 7 successive victories, while Lewis Hamilton has never claimed more than 5 wins in a row. Our situation was a little bit different because we had 2 guys fighting against each other within the team, Wolff told Sky Sports Media. I don't know whether he cares about the record. It's not something that would be important for me, any of those numbers. It's for Wikipedia. Nobody reads that anyway. Verstappen, who produced another imperious day to move 145 points clear at the top of the World Championship as he closes on a 3rd successive title, has repeatedly played down the importance of records. The 25-year-old once kept his emotions in check after the landmark victory, but he did admit he never thought the achievement would be possible. Of course, it's something you don't expect to happen, Verstappen said. I never thought at the beginning of the season that something like this was possible, so I'm very proud, but also very happy with the race in general. I'm very proud of also the whole team effort, the whole year already. What we are doing at the moment, winning every race this year, is something we definitely are enjoying, because I don't think these kind of seasons come around very often, and that's the same, of course, as winning 10 in a row. Horner has gone on to reflect on a golden moment for Red Bull. One individual not afraid of lauding Verstappen's achievements throughout the season has been Red Bull team principal Christian Horner, with his team still on track to deliver the first perfect season in the sport's history. Horner's described Sunday as a golden moment for Red Bull. What Max is doing, he's breaking records and driving at an unbeatable level, he said. I don't think that there's anybody in the world right now who can beat Max Verstappen in this car. That's for sure. You have to recognize and applaud what Max is doing at the moment. It's very special to achieve what he's achieved. We shouldn't detract from that in any way. In sport, very rarely things like this happen. It's a golden moment for him and a very golden moment for the team. Like Verstappen, Horner is full of praise for the team effort and has gone into Red Bull's achieving their current dominance. To have won 14 out of 14 races and leaving the European season undefeated is something we could never have imagined, he added. To win a Grand Prix is hard enough. To win 14 in a row or 24 in a row out of the last 25, that needs every single member of the team to do their part. So certainly looking quite good at the moment for Red Bull, who have really been dominating the sport as of yet. Certainly not what everyone wants to see, but it's not too bad to see that Red Bull are having a great time out there. Yes, Mark saying, imagine if the Ferraris did collide, the Tifosis would not have been happy at all. Just reading our poll at the moment, asking who your standout driver was from the Italian Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz taking 33%, 33% going to Verstappen, and 33% going to Alex Albon. No one there voting for Charles Leclerc. Please do drop a comment in the comment section, and don't be shy to let us know where you're watching from. Yes, we'll move on though to Alonso. Alonso has said Aston Martin must learn from their lessons and from Williams' outstanding weekend in Italy. Fernando Alonso admits that his Aston Martin Formula One team has to address the efficiency and weaknesses that was highlighted in Monza qualifying and must learn lessons from their rivals, Williams. The Spaniard got through the first two qualifying segments in 10th and 9th places before finishing in Q3 in 10th, which represents his worst group positions of 2023 so far. Alonso says it was apparent at the start of the season that the team needs to improve the straight line performance, and that it still has to understand why it is lagging behind Williams, whose car is always competitive at high-speed tracks. I think in Bahrain we found out weakness in the car, and it still is the same, he said. And Monza, we knew that we could face the same issues. The remaining races in the calendar are maybe a little bit more friendly with our characteristics. So maybe after this one, we should be a little bit more optimistic. Alonso admitted it didn't help that he failed to get a tow in Q3, though he conceded that it would not have helped to move him up the grid. I was not happy to be alone first, he said. But now, when I saw that we are 4 to 5 tenths to P9, that was impossible with any tow you can take, so we are in the position we deserve. We need to understand how to make the car stronger in this type of track, and with Williams being a clear example in these kind of tracks, they are outstanding, so we need to see what we can improve. Expanding on why Monza was so tough for the team, he said, I think the track characteristics, for sure, are not friendly with our car. Very efficient in terms of aerodynamics, the drag level very important here, only 6 corners, the rest is just flat out on the straights. And we knew that it could be a tough weekend, and we confirmed that feeling in FP1 and FP2, and this morning as well. Estimations in qualifying, it was between P9 and P12, and we are right in the middle, P10, so no surprises, but it's going to be a tough race. And we still have to score points, and it's a difficult one, he said. So, just looking on the back there, Aston Martin certainly do need to pick up the pace a little bit if they want to keep up their momentum, because they have now been passed in the Constructors Championship, by Ferrari off of their good weekend out in Monza. Moving on to another team not having a very good Monza weekend is the McLarens. McLaren having a really bad race weekend, and putting the cherry on top, the two teammates had a bit of a clash there, with Andrea Stella, the team principal, saying an unacceptable crash, so it shows that McLaren Formula One drivers put themselves above the team. McLaren Formula One boss Andrea Stella says it is unacceptable for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri to put affirming themselves above the team's fortunes after their Italian Grand Prix clash. On lap 24 of 51, the McLaren pair came to blows at the first chicane, as rookie racer Piastri rejoined the Monza track alongside earlier stopping Norris in a dice for what was the 10th position. With Piastri on the inside of the tight first apex, the front right of the Australian's MCL60 glanced his teammate's side pod. There was no major damage, and both escaped punishment from the stewards. Nevertheless, team boss Stella branded the incident as unacceptable. He said there should never be contact between two McLaren cars. There was a contact, which doesn't fit the way we go racing at McLaren, which is important to have clear parameters as to what you deem acceptable and what you deem unacceptable. It's not an emotion thing, it's just what you do with other things. You deal with racing in a similar way, which is very clear for any driver. There's something bigger than them. It's the team. Stella added that McLaren did not necessarily need to take urgent action in response to the bash, and considered whether Piastri had misjudged, emerging on colder tyres. The Italian continued, I need to review. Like all things, we will do it calmly. There's nothing that we need to do urgently. We will make the adjustments that we need. It is always a little bit tricky when you leave the pits, especially on hard tyres. It could be that certainly Oscar was trying to see where he could pace himself so that he could keep the position. But on colder tyres, this could be slightly more difficult than you might have anticipated. We could absolutely conclude that this is just a little misjudgment. Both drivers were aware that there must be no contact between the two McLarens, and it was just an issue with the execution. We all have issues with execution. Asked whether McLaren's undercut strategy for Norris had created the scenario, Stella said that it remained inexcusable for drivers to affirm themselves by placing the team at risk. He said if the contact is due to the fact that we were pressured because of the undercut, then we have something to review. In a race that ended with a clean Ferrari battle that was celebrated by both Scuderia drivers and team boss Fred Reece, Stella added that his duo were free to race also. Stella said, "My role is to give them principles and a clear parameter within which they can race. This is what we want to see. It is exciting to see the Ferraris today. In terms of how you want to see them stay within the parameters, it is not for us to say whether, or not for us to say because we are not the drivers. It is actually within them to have the skill set to stay. The tires were a little bit cold maybe, but I need to take more margin. There's no need to appreciate, or they need to appreciate that there's no way the line should be crossed." Well, interesting to see there from McLaren. We don't want to see McLaren having more disappointing showings like this race weekend. We thought they would be a little bit faster and would be able to maybe challenge a little bit more this race weekend, but difficult in a weekend where they didn't have that top line speed where we expected them to have it. Yeah, Mark, they're saying McLaren don't look as quick since the summer break, and that looks quite true, unfortunately. We hope that they do pick up the pace a little bit, and we do see them fighting out once again with the top teams, maybe at circuits that maybe suit their car a little bit more. But we'll have to wait and see what does happen after the next couple of races. We have a week's break now, and then we get back underway in Singapore for the night races, which are certainly more of my favorites. We have Singapore, then we have Japan and Suzuka, also one of my favorite races on the Grand Prix circuit. And then I think we have another race, and then America, then Mexico. Yeah, it's very, very busy. It's going to be a very, very busy Grand Prix calendar until the end of the season. Moving on, though, to our next article, a very sad article, unfortunately. Mark is going to be quite upset here. Daniel Ricciardo could miss the Singapore and Japan Grand Prix, says Red Bull boss. AlphaTauri Formula 1 driver Daniel Ricciardo is unlikely to race in Singapore next weekend, and it could also be that he misses Japan as he continues his recovery from a broken hand, according to Red Bull boss Christian Horner. The 34-year-old Australian suffered the injury in practice for the last month's Dutch Grand Prix and had surgery in Spain on August 27th. New Zealander Liam Lawson replaced Ricciardo at the Red Bull-owned sister team at Zandvoort and now in the Italian Grand Prix this last weekend in Monza. Certainly Singapore, I don't think that there's any chance for Ricciardo will be ready by then. It would be optimistic for Japan, Horner told reporters. We've seen with motorcyclists, rushing comebacks, they sometimes do more damage, so I think we want to make sure that he's fully fit before he gets back in the car. Horner said that Lawson, who's been racing in Japan this year and would undoubtedly feel at home at Suzuka, has done a solid job of filling in for Daniel Ricciardo. Horner went on to say, "I think he's acquitted himself very well. Lawson finished 11th at Monza after starting in 13th place in the Netherlands." Yeah, doing quite well at the moment is Liam Lawson. Quite sad to see that Daniel Ricciardo is not going to be in the car for the next few races, as Mark, I see in the comments, is quite upset saying, "No, Danny Rick." Yeah, unfortunate, but we do want to see him recovering properly. We don't want to see that injury going on for longer periods than it needs to. We want to see it getting sorted out. We don't want to see a repeat in terms of the likes of maybe a Marc Marquez, who hasn't really ever recovered from his big injuries and hasn't really ever returned to the form that he used to have. We don't want to see that from Daniel Rick. We want to see him recovering nicely and coming back into the sport with a refreshed mindset and just seeing that smile back on the Formula 1 grid. Moving on, though, to our final few articles. I've got 4 left for you guys. Actually, no, 3 left for you guys. Wolff admits that Schumacher's options for Formula 1 spot seem to be closed. Mark, again, is going to be quite sad with this article. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff has shed light on the challenging situations surrounding the reserve driver Mick Schumacher, casting doubts over the young German's immediate future in Formula One. Wolff revealed that the doors for an F1 seat in 2024 seem to be closed, with timing potentially not aligning with the former Haas driver's aspirations. Speaking to Sky Germany, the Silver Arrows boss acknowledged the difficulty of the current situation, expressing his regret that opportunities for the son of seven-time world champion are limited at the moment. Yes, it's a tough one. Somehow all the doors seem to be closed, which is a pity because Mick deserves to be in Formula One, said the Austrian. Maybe the timing is just not right, as there are no major teams that have seats available. While Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko has shut down any idea of Schumacher joining AlphaTauri, Schumi Jr.'s next steps were at Mercedes customer teams William. Logan Sargent has been struggling though this season, with his teammate Alex Albon absolutely dominating the American rookie in every aspect. Despite reports that Schumacher could be replacing Logan Sargent at the British team, it has emerged that team's principal James Vowles is unsure about Schumacher's metrics. According to Business F1, Sargent's financial support also brings a reported $30 million to the team, which are 7th in the Constructors' Championship. With the German's options running out, Schumacher is set to continue his role, where he is predominantly doing simulator work to help find the ideal setup for the Grand Prix weekends. When questioned about Schumacher's performance within the Mercedes team, particularly in relation to his role in the simulator, Wolff affirmed the young driver's abilities. Yes, absolutely, he stated. Within a doubt, it is good. So, hopefully we do get Mick Schumacher coming in to Formula One in the next few years. It would certainly be a shame if we don't get him coming into the Formula One seats, because I do think that he has a lot of potential and deserves to get a seat in Formula One. So moving on to our last few articles here from Planet Formula One, there's just a few roundup articles. Some news saying Toto Wolff is set to miss the Japanese Grand Prix for Mercedes. Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff is set to be absent from the Japanese Grand Prix, with the Australian due to have surgery following the next round in Singapore. He's reportedly due for a procedure on his knee, with driver development director Jerome D'Ambrosio having been primed to stand in for Wolff in his absence. Wolff is due back in the paddock for Qatar in October though, but will be present in Singapore as well, making it a one-race absence for the team boss. Expected. We don't necessarily have the team bosses at every single race weekend of a season. Sometimes they do just sit back in the team headquarters and represent the team from there. Nico Hülkenberg is also been quite far from complimentary for Haas at the moment after the team's struggles. Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen were both trailing at the back of the field at Monza on Sunday, leading Hülkenberg to say that the team are not point-worthy in their current guise. Long-standing tyre wear issues continued over the weekend, and the Haas duo finished a lap down, coming the checkered flag, with the Constructors' Championship looking to be a tough struggle for them at the moment. And Hülkenberg was not best pleased, saying after the race, "We're just eating the tyre, the balance is poor, we're sliding a lot more than other cars, and we can't keep the pace up using the tyre more." So yeah, it was one of the toughest and worst races of the season. Hülkenberg told media, including Planet Formula One, after the race, "The characteristic and the feel of the car was much better in Zandvoort than this weekend, so yeah, we need to review that." Obviously, there's also a big miss not having a front flap ready for the new front wing. I think we're the only team who did not have any parts, any upgrades here this weekend, and quite frankly, were not point worthy, and also for that reason. Yeah, moving on though, for the final article, George Russell wants a get out of free card removed at Monza. Plenty of drivers took the escape road at the Rettifilo chicane at Monza, which is the first two corners for that tricky chicane in Monza. Plenty of drivers took this to the escape road on Sunday, with George Russell being one of those drivers included, getting a penalty for doing so after locking up in the battle with Esteban Ocon. Even with that, he wants the options addressed for next year, believing it to be too easy to get out for drivers who outbrake themselves into the opening chicane, with a whole host of moves to the runoff during the race on Sunday. In Monza, it's a bit of a shame because it's always a get out of free jail card with the runoff there, he told media, including Planet F1, after the checkered flag, and that gives drivers, especially when you're fighting the chicane, to miss the corner. So I'd probably like to see a bit of a change there in the future. Yeah, interesting to see that they want those changes in that first corner. It's not really something I would have expected. I would have thought that they would have just been able to get that corner right, and once they do get that right, I mean, that is when you are able to make moves such as Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz still was able to get that corner right, even with the lockup, with Max Verstappen then getting past him because he didn't have as much of a good pace as he exited turn 2. But nonetheless, I do believe that George Russell is just moaning once again. I'm sure Mark will be agreeing with me in the comments. Yep, he says that George is crying again. As well as saying Mick deserves a spot in Formula 1. I certainly agree with that. Moving on to our final article here. Massa makes a huge revelation about Crashgate title fight. Felipe Massa has called upon his old Ferrari team to help him as he attempts to claim the 2008 World Championship through the courts, admitting they're yet to weigh in on his side. Lewis Hamilton won the 2008 Drivers' Championship in his second season in Formula 1. With McLaren claiming the title by just 1 point from Massa, but the legitimacy of his win has been called into question. The Brazilian's case is that the Crashgate controversy, where Renault driver Nelson Piquet purposefully crashed his car at the Singapore Grand Prix in order to let the teammate Fernando Alonso win the race, was covered up by senior F1 officials, and that he would have won the title without that cover-up. His case was spurred on when former Formula 1 CEO Bernie Ecclestone said after this year that he and the FIA president Max Mosley had known about Piquet and Renault's wrongdoing long before the matter came to light, but decided to do nothing in order to protect the sport from a scandal. He had been investigated, but then stated at the time that the result of the Singapore Grand Prix would have likely been nullified, which would have led to Massa winning the title by 5 points. So, very interesting there. We still have not yet to see any suits filed for this claim by Massa. There have been threatening legal action, though, over the past few weeks and months. We're yet to see an official statement given by Formula 1 management and by the FIA, but we will keep you all informed of the situation that does go on to, well, develop from here onwards. But that is it from me here today. Thank you very much for joining in for my Formula 1 news roundup here. Going to be another very busy week leading up to the Singapore Grand Prix. We have a week's break, and then, of course, we do get underway next weekend. It's going to be nice to have a little bit of a break, but I'm looking forward to the Singapore Grand Prix, and I'm hoping all of you will join us yet again. It's been quite a few busy race weekends for us, so thank you very much for joining. It has been that for me, Reece here on Forever Motorsports.